Welcome back, fellow Spelunkers. For the 10th time ever, welcome to Story Spelunking. I'm Sierra.
And I'm Stephanie.
Today, we will be traveling to Stephanie's neck of the woods and looking at the most iconic and recognizable band from Sweden, Abba.
And a shout out to my first roommate in college, Abby, who actually introduced me to Abba way back in 2018. And I haven't looked back since. In fact, I've even been to the Abba Museum in Stockholm, Sweden. I was there last March. And so if you are ever in Stockholm, 10 out of 10 recommend. This museum was amazing and it's definitely worth a visit. Plus, I love their tagline, I guess you'd call it, or their like marketing motto, walk in, dance out. And it's really hard when you're in the museum not to end up dancing.
That fits the vibe for this band and this album, which we're specifically looking at today, Super Troupers, perfectly. As with the Bastille album, I need to paint you a word picture for you to get into my mindset while I was listening to this album. We have some differences here on this, but I am a diehard lover of Mamma Mia and the sequel. Less so the sequel, but I love them both immensely. When we were trying to pick a theme for this episode, we were trying to pick a subject for this episode, I should say. We were like, we're really kicking off the summer. What is giving us summer vibes? And my first thought was Mamma Mia, because what is giving more summer vibes than Mamma Mia? It's like Mamma Mia, Aquamarine, H2O rewatch. We're having summer now. I know ABBA primarily from Mamma Mia, but I was like, I need to listen to this album all the way through because we picked this particular album because it had the song Our Last Summer on it, and we were thinking summer. It
Yes,
was
exactly.
like putting on a blindfold and throwing a dart to pick an album, but it was very serendipitous. So yesterday I was like, I need to listen to this album as a whole. This is not quite a concept album. I was joking to Stephanie. If this album is the concept album, the concept is divorce. So we're not quite going in on that.
No, we don't want to
But
go that dark.
no, especially not for our summer vibes.
No,
Girlies, we're trying to get in the warm sunshine.
especially
So,
me who's been stuck in the Nordic cold and darkness.
to the people in the Nordic areas and to the homies in Alaska, I hope sun is on the way to you. Here in Tennessee, it is here, which is how we get to my word picture. I put on my headphones. I'm like, I need to truly consume this album as a whole. So I leash up my baby, my human child, my little hamster, my dog Bean, and we hit the sidewalks of my neighborhood listening. And it could not have been a more beautiful and idyllic day. I just gotten off the phone with my pop, and he has a 5 year long unbroken 3 mile walk streak. Every day for the past 5 years, without missing a single day, he has walked 3 miles.
That's insane and serious life goals there.
It's incredible. So I was like, I need to get off my rear and get out there and walk. He's putting me to shame. But I didn't feel shame. I felt inspired. So he's actually inspiring me. So I got out there, and then the day was just so gorgeous and beautiful and perfect. It's that time of spring here in the South where, specifically Tennessee, it's shorts time. We're getting our first shorts days. Now, I'm beating the moon in a reflecting the sun competition. My legs are so white, but I got out there anyway. I mean, you need some sun. It's good for you. So I'm walking around listening to Super Troopers. It is golden. The sunlight filtering through the trees, the pollen floating through the air and landing on everything is really helping with the gold. I almost got attacked by a Canadian goose, which is
As one
typical
does, yes.
Canadian goose behavior, but it didn't even faze me because I'm too busy skipping along the streets as the sunlight shines through the trees to the sounds of Our Last Summer and Andante, Andante. And I'm like, life couldn't be more beautiful. I am straight up frolicking. And the album is so good, I just kept walking and I wound up at the sunset. And then I'm watching the sunset over these beautiful flower shrubs. And it's just like, life couldn't be more beautiful. And that was my experience listening to this album. I do not think that was their experience making the album, however.
Yeah, I don't think so. Which kind of brings us to the theme of this album, which is definitely a more mature theme than many of their previous albums, in because this is actually their seventh album.
When you think of ABBA, you usually think of that disco pop sound. It's so fun and upbeat and light, and then mix a jukebox musical, which is the sound of summer. You don't really think heaviness. You don't really think divorce. But that's really what's underpinning this album. So when we were thinking about a theme to go with today's episode, we couldn't quite do a concept album. We've been there. We've done that successfully. We needed to do our own thing. ABBA deserves its own thing. So, what we really want to talk about today is pop music as autobiography. How do artists tell personal stories through the songs of their albums of pop music? Pop music can be seen as light and frivolous, but ABBA, one of the quintessential examples of Europop, a genre people, to their loss, don't take very seriously. In this Europop album, they explore heavy real life issues, sometimes too fun, dancy tunes.
Yes. So with that theme in mind, but we want to give a little bit of background on the album itself and ABBA as a group, because maybe some of our more American audience may not be super familiar with them. And so ABBA, the name, comes from the first letter in all of the four members of the band. So you have Agnetha, Bjorn, Benny, and then Anna Frida. She mostly goes by Frida. That's how you get the name ABBA. They formed in the early 70s, but their really big breakthrough moment comes in 1974 in Brighton, England, when they win the Eurovision contest for the year 1974.
I didn't even realize how long Eurovision had been going on.
Yeah, I didn't realize how big of a deal Eurovision was until I moved to Europe because I had heard of it because obviously the song that they won with, I should mention, is Waterloo, which is probably my favorite ABBA song, maybe. I don't know. They have so many big hits. Yeah, when I moved to Finland, I didn't realize that like how big it's a serious thing. Like people have watch parties for the different semifinals. Well, before you get to the semifinals, each country has their own internal national competition in which they select one group, or it can be a solo singer to represent their country. And right now, for the 2025 Eurovision, which is going to happen in Basel, Switzerland, the nationals just happened and they just divided all of the contestants into two big semifinal pools, and the semifinal contests are May 13th and May 15th. From there, there's several that are picked for the grand finale. And yeah, it's like everyone talks about it. It makes all kinds of news. It's a lot of controversy. There's a lot of tea that happens on stage, behind stage, and amongst the contestants. It's this whole drama. But yeah, Sweden does historically does very well in Eurovision. And if they win this year, which they are projected to win again, they will have won the most contests of any country in Europe.
That's incredible. And I think you sent me the song that they're competing with.
Yes, so it's kind of funny. This is the first time that Sweden is sending a song in Swedish since 1998. And ironically, the group that is representing Sweden is actually from Finland, and they're part of the Swedish-speaking Finnish minority. And the song is entirely about going to the sauna. And in Swedish, it's bara bara bastu, which literally translates just go to the sauna.
And that is advice I have followed not infrequently in my life as a sauna lover myself. It's also interesting because this is an intersection of culture, economics, and politics, really, which is my favorite thing to study in history. That's the triangle of my historical interest. And I honestly think that ABBA is a good representation of this triangle.
Then you should definitely look into Eurovision. There is so much drama and politics that gets involved because, for example, Australia participates in Eurovision. Last time I checked, Australia is not in Europe. So, yeah, there's all kinds. I'll stop on the Eurovision. It's just what everyone has been talking about here in Finland. But anyway, back to ABBA. So, like we said, this is their seventh album of their career, and it's released. Obviously, they released some of the songs as singles before the whole album, but the whole album comes out in November of 1980. And they actually recorded it in a pretty concise time frame of 9 months, which is pretty impressive. You know, they obviously write their own songs and everything. And per the description of the album, if you look on Apple Music, says if ABBA were entering their final phase, Super Trooper showed they could still deliver the pure pop goods when it counted.
Doing research for these album deep dives that we do is interesting because this album, Super Troopers, isn't so literary, but there's a lot of juicy historical information about the band itself. This is Super Troopers to ABBA is rumors to Fleetwood Mac. This is what you have to keep in mind. Although I would say that I do think ABBA handles it with a little more grace.
Yeah.
I don't know how old everyone in both the bands were when these albums came out, but it feels like they handle all of this stuff with a little more wisdom and perhaps age.
I think that all the members were in their 30s at the time that this album was recorded.
But while researching for this, I have to read a lot of articles from people who just love music and albums and the things that come with that, which is a very interesting crowd. This wasn't like when I was doing the Bastille when I was reading poems. This was like people who are obsessed with vinyl records type of vibe. In Mark Elliott's article, Super Trooper, Abba's Shining Start to the 80s, he writes, across a tight 10 tracks, Super Trooper is like a greatest hit sampler, showcasing all the styles that made the group so successful. The winner takes it all regularly voted the people's favorite ABBA record and a top 10 hit in every major market is the ballad that was never truly bettered. And that's so interesting to think of it. I told Stephanie this album is like a charcuterie board of the
Yeah.
types of songs that made ABBA famous.
Yeah, it's a great way of looking at the album because so many of the songs are very different from each other. And I think that's why we couldn't really call it a concept album either. It's not, well, it is more cohesive than many of their other albums. Each song is almost its own genre, so it doesn't quite fit the concept album framing.
Interestingly, Classic Pop Music Magazine, which will reoccur frequently in my research for this episode, claims that this album was every single band member's favorite album that they ever worked on, and it was the fan favorite. And they even quoted Frida from the documentary Words and Music. She said, "You usually feel that each album you do is the best you've ever done. But I have to say that Super Trooper is a little different because we're pleased with each and every song on the album." Going into this album, you have to keep in mind there is a lot of behind the scenes interpersonal turmoil.
Yes.
This band is made up of two couples.
You have Agatha and Bjorn, and then Benny and Frida. And they're each married.
Both will wind up separating and divorcing sort of in the production of this album.
Yes, Agatha and Bjorn specifically decided to separate mid-production of this album.
And that's tough. That's tough to keep on working and making a pop album while that's going on. And they had two children and there was a custody battle. So the whole time they're like writing these songs, that is underpinning everything. However, you also have to keep in mind this album becomes all of their favorite album. This album reflecting on their relationships and divorces becomes their favorite album, which I think is a level of, I don't know, reflection and maturity and frankness and vulnerability that we don't really see in a lot of modern pop music. I don't even think that Rumors by Fleetwood Mac, one of my favorite albums of all times, gets to that level. It was still a little raw for them, I think. But just the ability to create a pop song that reflects on how two people hurt each other, but they still love each other and life goes on is really incredible.
Yeah, I don't know how they did it because Frida and Benny, I believe, separated just like a mere months after this album came out. So there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes here.
And that interestingly leads us into the track that kicks off this album, one you probably know and is in Mamma Mia, Super Trooper. Super Trooper, the title, comes from the name of the lights that would shine onto the stage. Just to keep things simple, I'm going to read you the Wikipedia explanation. Super Trooper is a registered trademark for a series of follow spotlights used in stadium, concert, and special event lighting. It's the specific brand name for the light that would shine on them when they played these big stadiums.
Yeah, I had no idea coming into this that a Super Trooper referred to a Spotlight brand. Now the song makes a lot more sense to me because I always kind of was like, I get kind of what they're talking about, but I don't know why they're saying Super Trooper. And then apparently these lights obviously can be very blinding to whoever's on stage. Also very warm. I don't know if any of you have ever had to do any type of stage production, but I even remember like playing in my school's orchestra and we would be up on stage. Even then, regular stage lots seemed to be hotter than if you were in a different section of the building. But then once I saw that, it kept reminding me of Blinding Lights by The Weeknd.
Kind of another song about fame and performances. Not to be a Debbie Downer, but if you think about it, these people almost become a product. Like everyone
Yeah.
pays to see them on stage. And even now, somewhat grimly, but also positively, they pay to see their holograms perform on stage.
Yeah, I was in London last year and I really wanted to go see the show, the Abba Voyage, as it's called. But it's kind of not in, it wasn't in the same part of London that I was in, and so I just wasn't able to do it. But yeah, someday I would like to go see it because they're planning on keeping it as long as it makes money, and it's continuing to make money. So
I said all that, but I really want to see it too. Still, the implications of that are a lot to think about, going to a hologram concert.
yeah, I did see the behind the scenes of how they did it, which is incredible because ILM, we just mentioned in our Star Wars episode, they're the ones who did it. And it was so funny in an interview with Bjorn, they had, he was talking about, because they had to do like all the, I don't know what you call it, like the dots on your face,
Motion capture.
thank you, motion capture. I don't know why I couldn't think of that. And he has always had a beard his whole life. But in order to get the dots glued on his face, he had to shave his beard. And he was traumatized. He's like, never again will I shave my beard.
That would be weird.
Yeah, it was just funny to see it, the interview with Bjorn about that. But yeah, this song is definitely kind of about how that even in stardom, life can become a drudgery. Like there's a series of lyrics that say, all I do is eat, sleep, and sing. And then a few lines later, wishing every show was the last show.
Again, it's like they're a commodity, but they want the people to be happy, and this is how they make their income. It almost sort of makes the title a double entendre because they're like trooping through this. They're super troopers for getting through this.
Yeah,
Another interesting element to the song is it's also a love song about wanting to see someone and how they're the highlight of your day when you're doing all of this, like pouring your soul out for the audience. But you feel alone, and all you want to see is this one person. Even in the midst of their divorce, this was Bjorn writing about Agnetha.
yeah,
So that's kind of beautiful in a way and also sad. But we're dancing, and I
yeah.
love Mamma Mia.
And that brings us straight to the next song, which is another one of their major, major hits. The Winner Takes It All.
It's so interesting that this becomes one of the biggest hits because this song is sad.
Exactly.
And this really gets us again into the autobiographical element because as much as at times Bjorn tried to deny it, which it's kind of like how George Lucas was like, the things that happened in the original trilogy in Star Wars were always the plan. And you're like, okay, George. Bjorn is like, this song is not about my divorce. And you're like, okay, Bjorn.
Yeah.
Once again, referring to Classic Pop magazine, they wrote, although Bjorn has insisted that The Winner Takes It All is not strictly autobiographical about his divorce from Agnetha, in the sense of there being a winner and a loser, the raw emotional lyrics can only be a subliminal release. He admitted that once the backing track was complete, the song is one of the quickest he'd ever written, with the lyrics pouring out of him.
Yeah, and I think that says something then. Because it's it's basically like this for anybody who's writing. If something's easy to write, that means it's coming from within. So you're not making this up out of thin air about, a winner taking it all. And in this song, I in particular love the piano portion. Just how the piano interweaves in and out is probably one of my favorite elements of the song. And maybe The Winner Takes It All is my favorite on this album.
It's so interesting because Bjorn wrote it, but she's singing. So he's having this catharsis of their divorce through the writing, and she's having it by putting all this raw emotion she feels in the singing. And then there's also a very interesting element. I don't want to get into this too much because one, I don't know that much, and two, this is like that's too real and too personal to get into a custody battle, but they were going through one. And the lyrics of the song say, "But what can I say? Rules must be obeyed. The judges will decide. The likes of me abide." And you're telling me this isn't about the divorce?
Yeah. Yeah, and I highly recommend looking up some of their concert videos or the music video for this song, and you can just see it in their facial expressions as well.
If we're considering the rumors comparison still, this is Silver Spring. This is that one performance of Silver Spring where Stevie Nicks is just, her looks are killing, and it is just so serious. But again, maybe with a little bit more maturity and reflection and less
Yeah.
suspicious anger, and probably less cocaine.
Probably less cocaine helps things be processed better.
That's true.
And then we have quite the genre change in tone and style of music with the next track on this album, On and On and On.
I'd actually never heard this one before because it's not on Mamma Mia. No, that's not what. Well,
Mm,
I'll leave it at that. But I listened to it on my walk when I was frolicking around my neighborhood, and then I listened to it again this morning when I was doing my research. And we revisit Classic Pop Magazine to get some more detailed info. As initial sessions for the album took place in January 1980, Benny and Bjorn found themselves struggling to write for the new album. As this was the same predicament they found themselves in with Voulez-Vous, they once again decided a visit to sunnier climates could help to get their creative juices flowing, not to mention a break from the tensions of their home lives, and headed for Barbados. The trip was short lived, lasting only 10 days, but was a success in that it resulted in them having written the first two songs on the album, Happy New Year, and On and On and On.
you definitely sometimes need to go travel to a different spot to get inspired to write, especially if you're in cold Sweden. Barbados is a much more pleasant climate.
That's why people from Alaska flock to Hawaii in the winter.
And a lot of people in the Nordic regions, especially Finland, I can't remember the name off the top of my head. There's like a region in Spain and Portugal that a bunch of Finns go to.
That sounds awesome. Let's go have some tapas in the sun.
I am not a beach person though.
Well, we can be on a cliff beach. They have those.
Yeah, yeah. But aren't you afraid of heights?
I'll stand back far enough. I just have to see
Okay.
the ocean. Now, it's going to make me sound a certain way, but I'm going to say it anyway because I will just say anything. I believe that one of the most beautiful places you can ever go in the world is Florida. So every day of the week, I'm going to Florida. In a metaphorical sense, I'm choosing to go there. The
Mhm.
Florida Panhandle, it doesn't get more beautiful in the whole world than that. So if I needed to get my creative juices flowing, or even if I didn't and I just needed an excuse, you would be catching me in Destin, Florida, of Taylor Swift song fame, but we all knew about it before.
Yeah, Florida is a good place. My mom actually, I just had a phone call with her a little bit ago. She's like, "Oh, I really need a Disney break." So we may be going to Disney in the next coming months, which would be great because I haven't been there since right before I moved to Finland.
Maybe it'll get your creative juices flowing, and next thing you know, you'll have written two hits for your seventh studio album.
Yes, because I definitely do lyric writing.
You never know.
But back to On and On and On. Yeah, I also hadn't, I don't think I had ever heard this song before either. It's funny, it's very distinctly 1970s sounding, if that makes sense.
I completely agree. It's got that, it's not, it doesn't feel quite disco, but very like disco adjacent. And it's got this like, the music feels that way. And then the words they're saying, like he said, keep on rocking, baby, till the night is gone, on and on and on. And then it also sort of remarks on the social and political turmoil of the 70s. This is not really the 80s yet because it came out in 1980. So we're still like, think Vietnam War, just all of the stuff is going on, Soviet Union. So some of the lyrics are, something bad is happening. I'm sure you do agree. People care for nothing, no respect for human rights. Evil times are coming. We are in for darker nights.
Yeah, so it has kind of like the 70s sound and also some of the 70s turmoil.
It's so funny to me because the rise of disco, it falls kind of directly between the free love chaos world is in turmoil of the 60s and then slightly more economic prosperity of the 80s. So then you have this decade that is just stressful and oil crisis and all this stuff. But you know what we are going to be doing? Dancing. Dancing the night away. It's kind of like the recession pop of 2009, but disco. Or maybe I should say that recession pop of 2009, housing crisis fame, all that music that came out then was like the new disco. So we're dancing, but we know that life is stressful, but we're actually dancing because life is stressful. This song, On and On and On, reminded me, I don't even know if there was a real reminder or it just popped into my head of Olivia Newton-John and roller skating, which brings up a side note. This is not a soapbox. This is just a brief side note. I really, really, really want to watch Xanadu. I could not tell you why. I have no explanation. I've never seen this movie before. I just feel like I would like its vibe. If there's content in it, I don't know. I've never seen Xanadu. I only know Olivia Newton-John is in it, and that people say that it is campy and a weird movie. So I want to watch it. I love that type of movie. If anyone knows where it can be streamed, where can you stream Xanadu? Please let me know.
'Cause I have no idea because Sierra had to remind me who Olivia Newton-John even is, and I have never heard of Xanadu, so
I love movies that are just like someone, a thought popped into their head and they automatically made it. We don't make enough weird movies anymore. We have to make the same IP. Everything has to be related to Marvel or Star Wars or this or that. You got to recognize it from your childhood. Nostalgia, nostalgia, nostalgia. Why can't we just watch a movie that's like a fever dream? That's why I love weird sci-fi movies. I just want to turn on a movie and be like, I'll have what they're having. I want to be transported into a world of craziness when I watch it. When I turn on a movie, I don't want it to have a plot. I want it to have a vibe.
yeah. Or you don't want to see a remake of the same story that you've seen like 5 times because I just saw a trailer for the new Fantastic Four that's coming out in pretty soon. I can't remember when. And do we have to watch another origin story? Like, I know how they became the Fantastic Four because I've seen it multiple times.
The only valid Fantastic Four to me is the cartoon my brother and I had on DVD as children. I loved it.
I actually controversially liked the live action one from the early 2000s because
I like that movie too.
I love Johan Grafond.
That's also a soapbox for another day, I think.
Yes, we have gotten sidetracked. So
But
we
that's
go
the
back.
fun of it. Now we're just catching a vibe. Don't you feel like we could just go to the discotheque now? Like we're going with the flow. I love summer. I'm not thinking about divorce.
Yeah. Which then brings us to a much slower song, and again, a very different sounding song.
Andante Andante is my favorite song from this album. It's also in Mamma Mia 2 of the most fabulous costuming you've ever seen in your life. They put Lily James in outfits that I want in my own closet to wear every single day of the week, and I also want to be on a Grecian Isle. But this song on its own and in Mamma Mia is my favorite. It's just so beautiful, and you also want to dance, but more just like slowly dance around.
Yeah, and of course you can define a Dante in kind of two different ways. You can look at it from a musical definition, which musically it means a moderately slow tempo, or you can look at it in the Italian, which means walking pace or gently.
And that kind of ties into one of the lyrics, one of the main lyrics, tread lightly on my ground. It's giving me a song in my heart moment because I was frolicking around listening yesterday, and so I am resisting for all of our sakes bursting into song. The lyrics of the song, though, in spoken terms, so you can give me some snap laws. I'm about to do a slam poetry reading of it. Andante, andante, tread lightly on my ground. Andante, andante, oh please don't let me down. And now imagine we're on a Grecian Isle in a beautiful maxi skirt. Yeah, we're treading lightly and it's slaying. But just like Lily James on the Grecian Isle in Mamma Mia 2, the next song is just one person. Me and I is the next track on the album.
Yeah, I also this was another one I don't think I had ever heard before. It has some very interesting lyrics and some literary references. The first being, "Yes, I am to myself what Jekyll must have been to Hyde."
I've actually never read Jekyll and Hyde. I, of course, know about it through cultural osmosis, and my neighbor in Alaska, Jillian, shout out Jillian, gave it to me for Christmas or my birthday one year, but I haven't read it yet. Maybe I will this October. Halloween vibes.
I have honestly haven't read it either, but yeah, I know what it's about because cultural osmosis, as you called it. And then there's another reference to another figure. The lyric is, "With ideas I got from my good old friend, Dr. Freud." And my immediate thought was, that's not a good friend to have.
Dr. Freud is no friend of mine.
And maybe that's why you have Jekyll and Hyde personalities, because he's your friend.
Maybe you separate yourself into the distinct categories of me and I because you have been listening to Freud. You're giving yourself multiple personalities. I'm glad that scholarship today is more willing to question these great men of the past in some ways because having read some of Freud, as I think we all had to in school, you're kind of
Yes.
like, this is weird that the teacher is forcing me to read this.
Yeah, I recently just had to read some of his stuff for a methodology course I was taking, which, by the way, methodology courses are the worst, no matter where you have to take them. And we were talking about psychoanalysis, and ugh, it was not a pleasant experience.
Sometimes it's not that deep. As much as we deep dive into things, sometimes things are just not that deep. And if you have a weird thought, you can just be like, that was a weird thought and put it away and you don't it doesn't have to say anything about you as a person.
Exactly.
Let's set aside these things. In a song with no summer vibes at all, Super Trooper continues with the song. Happy New Year. Happy New Year was also written on the 10-day warm weather Barbados work vacay, and it stemmed from the idea they were toying with of writing a musical, which would become Mamma Mia, a gift to us all. But this song has no Mamma Mia vibes. No Mamma Mia vibes to be found.
Yeah, and it's funny when I first saw the title of this song, I had listened to it before this album listen, but then listening to it again, I was like, no wonder why no one really sings this at the beginning of a new year, even though it's called Happy New Year, because the song is quite sad and quite melancholy. And for example, here are some of the lyrics. It's the end of the party. The morning seems so gray. And a few lines later, may we have our hopes, our will to try. If we don't, we might as well lay down and die.
It's just all giving seasonal depression. It's giving you got a case of the Januaries. When I lived in Alaska, January, longer than that, but January has often been my least favorite month of the year. Christmas is over. There's no more holidays coming up once you're past New Year's. And it's January's a depressing month in general, and it's the middle of winter. And if you live far north in Alaska or the Nordic regions, it's dark. It's just dark and cold and sad. Do I want to sing about that? No. I don't need a song to tell me that January in the middle of winter in the far north makes you want to lay down and die. I had people in real life telling me that every single day.
Yeah, I definitely experienced it for the first time. My first winter in Finland. Yeah, the worst months. Actually, I think February is probably the worst month, and November is also really bad. But of course, January is not much better. But yeah, it wasn't the fact that it was cold and snow, but it was just the darkness. I'd get out of class at 2:45 in the afternoon and it'd be dark out. And I'm like, I just want to go to bed, but I can't because it's 2:45.
And by January, the snow is like losing its luster. It's not even so beautiful and white anymore. Now it's like grimy, sandy, and gravelly. Now it
Yes.
just looks like dirty mud on the side of the road. And you're just like, I don't want to fall down on ice. It's
Yes,
too
because
much to ask for the sun, but the sun comes out, melts a little bit, goes down at 3 p.m., and now everything is icy.
yeah, this song is, although it has a happy, well, its original title wasn't even this, but even
Yeah,
though it has a happy title, it's not a happy song.
yeah, per the accursed website, Genius Lyrics, which I hate and sometimes love in equal measure, the song was written by Benny and Bjorn. The original title was Daddy Don't Get Drunk on Christmas. But they decided to rewrite the lyrics and they have this Happy New Year, the song that describes lost dreams. Now take this with a grain of salt because it's genius lyrics. But Daddy Don't Get Drunk on Christmas, and they were thinking about putting that in their musical. Can you think of a song that is more depressing and weird and dark?
No.
That probably exists somewhere out there, but not where I'm looking. That's what Freudian people are into.
Yeah. But then on to arguably one of their other really big hits on this album, Our Last Summer.
Finally, summer's here. Mamma
Yes.
Mia is back. We're leaving behind the more like sad, bad year. And we're back. Oh, summer, Paris, Mamma Mia.
Yes. And of course, this song was inspired by a young romance that Bjorn had in the summer in Paris. And so obviously the song is full of references to Paris. There's a line about smiling like Mona Lisa, and I wrote next to it, wait, is Mona Lisa actually smiling? And then I realized that's a huge debate in the art community that I don't really know if I want to get into.
I have to leave the art people alone. That's not the kind of art I'm into. I'm more of a connoisseur of the written word.
But even this song has some kind of sad undertones and echoes some of the similar themes we were talking about in the All This Bad Blood episode.
That's true. This song deals with the ideas of aging and growing up and looking back nostalgically, but there's like a bittersweet tinge to it. Again, you're accepting things. You're resigned to the things that have happened and the things that will happen. You're aging and you miss things, but you also see where there was bad things in it, but the bad things made you who you are. It's a really self-reflective album, kind of, for a pop album, for a dance pop album.
Yeah, and then there's this guitar solo interlude, which leads us to a time jump in the lyrics. And there's an interesting line that, yeah, you're the hero of my dreams. So yeah, the idea again, reflecting and nostalgia in this song.
In Mamma Mia, the amazing movie jukebox musical, it was a musical on the stage first, but the movie is what's important to me. As we established in the Star Wars episode, I was not really living in an area with a lot of theater of this level. There was theater, I was in it, but I was in it at the middle school. So you know what I'm saying? I was in the church choir. I was not doing Mamma Mia as it should be done with justice. But in the movie, you get to this guitar riff and the time jump, and then suddenly there's like that one riff, and then Colin Firth is in like punk makeup, and it's amazing. And then they're singing this song and sailing around on a beautiful catamaran on a Grecian Isle. Actually, I don't think it's a catamaran. I think it's a monohull. But it doesn't matter. I want to be there doing this and swimming in the beautiful blue ocean. I love summer and I love the sea.
I don't know, maybe this is where I should bring up the fact that I have never seen Mamma Mia or Mamma Mia 2, and I will not see either of them.
You've made this choice, and I cannot support you in this because you are robbing yourself of what Barbie thought it was doing for girlhood, Mamma Mia did. And I'm not trying to compare women like that, but I'm being so serious. Meryl Streep and her group of friends versus Amanda Seyfried and her group of friends, women of all ages, dancing queen, and more importantly, we're just running an inn on a beautiful Grecian isle, and the water is blue, and it's summer and Greek mythology and the Fountain of Aphrodite. It's the best movie.
I just it just is not my type of movie, and I can't force myself to sit through that. I also don't really like musicals, so it's just a bad combo for me all the way around.
You say that, but once we very seriously forced our friend Caitlin to watch Phantom of the Opera, Joel Schumacher's Phantom of the Opera, a movie we both dearly cherish.
There's a big difference between Phantom of the Opera and Mamma Mia.
There's also a big difference between the Paris of this song and the Paris that I visited in 2018. I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with Paris syndrome. The Independent defines it as a state of severe culture shock, physical and psychological symptoms when Paris fails to live up to expectations have been known to include hallucinations, a rapid heart rate, dizziness, and nausea. Now, I did not experience any of that craziness, and I struggle to see how that would be real. But, you
Yeah.
know, different strokes for different folks. But I certainly felt shock when the expectations I had for Paris did not live up to the reality. My whole bedroom was Paris themed, and this is on me because you shouldn't decorate your whole bedroom in the style of a place you don't know the reality of that well, maybe. But I liked the vibe. Again, I'm going with vibes, and also I was a young teen. So don't
Yeah.
come for me, Paris stands. I don't know who you are. When I got there, I was like, oh, there's puke all over the sidewalk. Now, Forbes points out that Paris syndrome primarily affects Japanese tourists. And I am, of course, not Japanese, but I stand with them because the Paris described in the song, did I eat at a lot of cafes and were they incredible? Yeah, I liked a Parisian cafe. And at one point, I was sitting in a cafe and I was drinking. Honestly, I was drinking a lot of hot chocolate. You guys know I'm an iced latte, even a hot latte girl. But I was drinking hot chocolate because I was in Europe and I was like, I love chocolate. I look up, oh my gosh, it's the bridge Princess Diana died under. Oh, and look right there, puke on the sidewalk. So yeah, Paris was not all that I dreamed it was. And when I look back on it, has a beautiful romantic haze descended upon those memories somewhat? Why, yes. That was not my last summer, but I was having summer in Paris. And was it beautiful? Kind of. Was it also not what I expected? Yes. There was a fence around the bottom of the Eiffel Tower, and you had to hold on to your purse for dear life because pickpockets were everywhere. Even in the Louvre, there are signs everywhere. Even when you're looking at the Mona Lisa, you have to have your crossbody bag on the front because people will steal your stuff in the Louvre. You don't think about that when you're planning your trip to Paris sometimes.
I have not been to Paris unless you count the Charles de Gaulle airport because I had a 4-hour layover there when I flew home once for Christmas. So I do have a Paris stamp on my passport, but I did not leave the airport.
That airport was another disillusioning experience for me because you are standing right next to the Louis Vuitton store, and
Yes.
then you go into the bathroom and there's no toilet paper.
It's not the worst airport I've been in Europe. The worst airport in Europe, in my experience, and I have been to a lot of airports in Europe, is Amsterdam.
My parents have flown through Charles de Gaulle several times First time they went, a lot of stuff got stolen out of their bags because they were traveling from South Georgia to Thailand. And they were bringing a bunch of stuff to some friends who lived there and just tons of stuff stolen out of their bags. And then when we flew out of there in 2018, the airport workers went on strike and our flight got canceled. And we wound up having to stay in a hotel that if you had told me that they rented it out hourly to people for evil activities, I would completely believe you. That hotel was nasty.
Oh,
And
yes.
so I cannot, that is probably for me one of the worst airports, although Miami Airport in the early 2000s also ranks high on my list of most hated airports.
Yeah, I was just counting European airports because I have a whole nother list for worst airports, and most of them are American, unfortunately.
I
But
stand for no ATL slander, but we're moving on.
so we leave our last summer and we go to another very different song called The Piper.
I had not heard this song before ever, before I was frolicking in my neighborhood yesterday, and that was a strange experience.
Yeah, same. I hadn't heard this song before, and then my first time I heard it, I was like, "Oh, the Pied Piper." Now I said, but apparently Bjorn and Benny were inspired by a Stephen King novel called The Stand, which apparently is about the rise of a fascist type leader. And that I think that made the lyrics, at least for me, more meaningful, especially these lyrics in particular. He gave them a dream. He seduced everybody in the land. The fire in his eyes, and the fear was a weapon in his hand. So they let him play.
First, my mom watched the 1994 miniseries of The Stand in the 90s, and I think my grandma and my dad and my uncle and one of their friends watched too. I don't know, because when my mom tells the story, she's just like, The Stand is crazy. And sometimes I can't tell whether she liked it or not. So shout out to my mom, who may or may not have liked The Stand. Secondly, this song, the vibe is weird. There's a lot of, I don't think this is the instrument that it is, but back in the day, when my mom and I would drive around Alaska, imagining ourselves in a sunny, warm locale, we're listening to a lot of yacht rock, a lot of 70s music, and 70s, early 80s. There's a lot of this weird little flute, the SNL skit, but also like I used to joke to mom like, "Oh, we're listening to another one with pan flute," kind of
Yeah,
like Africa by Toto. A lot of Jimmy Buffett songs have this weird little flute in it. If you listen to a playlist of yacht rock, this little flute is coming up all the time. And it's like there's another pan flute moment. But this one is obviously specifically because of the Pied Piper reference.
yeah,
Classic Pop magazine describes this song as a medieval inspired song that warns of the possibility of looming dictatorship, which also probably felt really real in the 70s in Europe.
exactly. Yeah.
This is pre-fall of the Soviet Union.
And there's also an interesting phrase in Latin randomly in this song.
That's sort of adding to the witchy sort of hypnotic vibe of it, if you think
Mhm.
about it.
Yeah, in like the medieval period where Latin was still spoken. And the Latin phrase is,
Subluna Saltimus.
which apparently translates, we dance under or we dance beneath the moon.
This is also getting a little Fleetwood Mac adjacent because they were always putting out witchy music like that. I immediately added this song to my Spotify playlist about songs that are obsessed with the moon. There
Because the
are
moon
far
comes
more of
up.
them than you would
Yeah.
think.
You have to share that with me.
I definitely will. And maybe I'll link it in the description. If you're just looking for songs where people are crazy about the moon, I've been collecting them.
Then we go from a very unfamiliar ABBA song to a much more familiar ABBA song in Lay All Your Love on Me. This one is definitely more typical, what I would call like classic ABBA sound. Like it definitely it features more prominently in like ABBA playlists, or you hear it more on the radio, even to this day.
If you're in the Mamma Mia mindset, as I always try to be, this is the one that plays when they're on that scene on the beach where it's Sophie played by Amanda Seyfried and he's getting ready to go to his bachelor party and it's all the guys and they're just like dancing and singing on the beach. The movie scene is so iconic. But I didn't really appreciate the song until I listened to it on its own because Amanda Seyfried is so young seeming in this movie. Like Sophie's like 19 in the movie, I think. But this song is being sung by adults,
Yeah.
like with children and divorces.
Yeah, because some of the lyrics are, it was like shooting a sitting duck, a little small talk, a smile, and baby, I was stuck.
And that's that part where Amanda Seyfried is leaning against the rock and they're like miming a bow and she's like, I was stuck. It's amazing. This movie is summer. But then tying back to It's different when you think about the age of the people who were actually singing the song. If you're thinking about ABBA as the band and not Mamma Mia the musical, some of the lyrics are, I still don't know what you've done with me. A grown-up woman should never fall so easily. It hits different when you're in your mid-30s versus when you're 19.
Yeah, definitely.
That's also my favorite line in the song.
And then the album sort of ends, we'll get there in a second, with,
Foreshadowing.
yes, it's actually a live recording. It was a live concert in Wembley Arena, and the song is The Way Old Friends Do.
Something about a live performance can sometimes it irritates me because I'm like, I want a clean recording of this. But sometimes a song sung live is just that much more impactful. Again, it's that 1977 Silver Springs live performance where Stevie Nicks is just like staring to kill, juxtaposed against this live performance, which is so beautiful and at peace with their lives.
Yeah, when I was listening to it, at first I didn't realize it was from a live concert. Like you can really hear we haven't even talked about like the strength of the vocalists, because they can really sing and they blend so well together. I think in this one is you really hear it because it's, a live concert. So there's, no, messing around in the studio with vocals.
Some of the lyrics from the song are, you and I can share the silence, finding comfort together, the way old friends do. And after fights and words of violence, we make up with each other, the way old friends do. We can face it together, the way old friends do. There's this level of maturity. I think about this a lot because when I was younger, honestly, I can still be a bit of a grudge holder. And that just makes you bitter and it makes you angry and that makes you tired. And your life is poorer all around for it. And they were going through serious, serious things, if we have not said it enough, acrimonious divorce. But they still managed, which is a thing, like, I think as you go through life, it's like you're a river rock. All these things are happening to you, and they're hard, and you're experiencing things, and they can either make you fall apart and break you down into a million little pieces, or they can refine you into something smooth, something at peace. I'm thinking of rocks. You're not a something, you're a person. Whoever is listening, we're all people, unless you're a dog. Shout out to Bean. But, life
Who
can.
occasionally interrupts our recordings.
Okay, she's embarking in the background. I'm going to try to cut it out, but if you hear someone yapping, that's not me, it's my dog Bean. But this song, it makes you feel sad, but also at peace because you can move on, even if someone does something to hurt you. Sometimes people do things to hurt you and you are completely justified in cutting them off. I am by no means saying you must forgive everyone. In fact, I think forgiveness, yes. Having everyone in your lives all the time, absolutely not. Sometimes you have to do what's best for you, and it's not wrong to not have someone in your life. But these people have kids together, and they're also in a band together. They're going to be around each other. So they found
Yeah.
a way to make peace with each other and still live in each other's lives and even still love each other.
Yeah, because they just I think it was last year they just got knighted all together in Sweden by the King of Sweden. And so if you didn't
Yeah.
know that the Sweden still has a monarchy, they do. It's still as spicy as it was hundreds of years ago. So the album sort of ends with this really nice resolution of, we can still be amicable, we just like the way old friends do.
Kind of an
But then,
answer to the winner takes it all. So you've dealt
yes.
with the courts, you've dealt with fate, and now we're old friends.
But then
What if we walk
there
that back real quick?
Yes, and we add a random bonus track.
Elaine, which is this bonus track, is a huge narrative step back, even though the song is fun, because it's basically about this woman who's trapped in a toxic relationship. So
Yeah,
she has not made peace and been able to move on and just dealt with the cards life has given her. Instead, she's like trapped.
to contrast with the lyrics that we just discussed with the way friends do, here's some of the lyrics from Elaine. It's a dead end street. They tie your hands and tie your feet, and the street is narrow, a nowhere lane, a nowhere train for Elaine, Elaine, Elaine.
In my research, I found this album review blog called Subjective Sounds, and people who run album review blogs are, dare I say, diva. Subjective Sounds, I don't know anything about this person, but I do know that they are diva because on the Subjective Sounds blog, it says Elaine is a non-album track that made its way to the album when it was reissued on CD in 1997 and has subsequently been maintained on all digital releases henceforth. I generally lament the inclusion of bonus tracks, particularly post-release, and this is no exception. There's nothing fundamentally wrong with the song, but it isn't worthy of inclusion on Super Trooper, despite being the B-side to Winner Takes It All. Thankfully, due to the convenience of streaming, I can delete that song from the album and appreciate Super Trooper as it was originally intended.
This sounds pretty pretentious, I'm not going to lie. And kind of like some of the fans I've come across in the Star Wars fandom who are like original trilogy purists.
Much like with those people, I truly feel that this blog is run by someone's father. This is giving something your dad would say. I know Subjective Sounds has a huge record collection because they kind of said that in the article. And they have this album on box set, but they prefer to listen to it on Apple Music's remaster because that does the album the best justice of any streaming service. And as long as people who have these opinions are not being mean to other people who have slightly different opinions or know slightly less, I say go off, Queen. Go off, Diva. Yes, kick Elaine off the album. That is your right.
So I do think it's kind of interesting with this song, though. It kind of, well, it sounds very different too, because it starts with this weird synthesizer. And so it's kind of like, oh, here's the 80s, because that is the sound of the 80s.
It's a step into the future, but a narrative step back from the peace and resignedness of the
Yeah.
way old friends do. So maybe I do kind of agree with Subjective Sounds. When I re-listen to this, maybe I will delete Elaine off the album. It is dead to me. Bye, Elaine. Stay in that relationship. I'm moving on.
Yes.
I am moving on from Elaine the way that the band was moving on from Hatred.
And while they do produce one more album after this, ABBA does officially break up in 1982.
Yeah, it would have been hard to keep working together. When I was reading like their backstory and how quickly some people moved on after the divorces, a lot of the articles described what was going on in their lives as turmoil. But if my husband got with someone the week of our divorce, it would be not turmoil, it would be national news because there would be no more albums because I'd be in prison. So we have to give applause for their ability to work
Yeah.
together and communicate better than me.
Yeah, I would have the, yeah, I don't know how to, that would be really difficult. As they say, breaking up is never easy. So now we are going to kind of wrap up our theme again about how can we explore pop music as kind of autobiography? And so most times when you say pop music, people just think, frivolous noise in the background. But a lot of this, at least if this album showed anything, that pop music can actually deal with serious narratives.
We will explore anything with a narrative. So, because we're talking about Super Troopers, there's a narrative there. People are too quick to write off pop music. We actually talked about this quite a good deal in our Fourth Wing episode. Everything is sending you a message. Everything is trying to teach you something, trying to persuade you in one direction or another. So you can't just turn off your critical thinking skills or you're consuming the message blindly. This is not always a bad thing. If you can teach someone something without beating them over the head with it and them enjoying it, that's actually a great skill. So we need to take pop music seriously because even things that seem superfluous are important. They are telling us something. If it's taking up our time, it's important in some way.
Exactly. Yeah.
Listen, no matter what Hot Topic teens and people who only listen to rock and roll music, who only listen to serious bands tell you, pop music's narratives reflect on difficult and real experiences a lot of the time. But they just set them to a catchy track, which is what attracts people to the likes of Taylor Swift. I know a lot of people view Taylor Swift with derision, but there's a reason she's like the biggest artist out there right now.
Yeah,
That's what makes
exactly.
this music popular is that people can see themselves in these songs, even if they're
Yeah.
catchy, even if they're on the radio, which who even listens to the radio anymore? That kind of makes me sad.
I don't know.
But this music is a mirror to the audience it's aimed at.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, you've already kind of mentioned it. This is kind of your niche of, or at least what you love to study historically, is this intersection between pop music or popular culture, economics, the economy, and politics, the political.
Our worlds are shaped by what we take in. This is why I've mentioned folk protest music a couple times, because that's where we really, in my humble opinion, start seeing this take off. Because this is when we really start think about the birth of radio and all this. But people were using popular hymns and setting it to union songs, picketing songs, because people already knew the tune of the hymns, and now they're saying their political message, their economic message to the hymn so that they can memorize them really easy. That starts getting movements aligned because people can remember songs easier than they can remember random paragraphs to spew. And it
Yeah.
only goes on further as the 20th century progresses. And that's why pop music is so important to me. Also, I was a teenage girl. I am one of the girlies still, even though I am now an adult woman. I know their power, and I'm not talking about just like girl power. Teenage girls and adult women as a consumer block are crazy. You know the stereotypical, oh, girls love to shop. They are a huge consumer impact on music, on books. Look at Book Talk again. You think about women historically buy the things the home needs. They provide for the home, and that extends to entertainment. And what you buy with your money has an impact on the economy. Obviously, that's a direct link. And the economy has a direct impact on politics.
Yeah.
But the things that you buy that impact the economy, that impact the politics, are influenced by the media you're taking in. It's an Ouroboros, it's a snake eating its own tail. That's why it's so important to critically consume our media
Mhm.
because it's impacting our culture, it's impacting our economics and impacting our politics. And then the politics flows downstream into the music. And now we've started the cycle again.
Exactly. Yeah.
I love this. It's very important to me. I loved writing papers, and I wrote this very slayful paper in college. I titled Elvis to Olivia, meaning Olivia Rodrigo, the relationship between politics, popular music, and teenage girls. And this is just, first of all, I'm very proud of that title. That's why I said that.
Yes.
And I know when I was writing that paper, I was like, I am cooking. But that's how I feel when we do this.
Yeah.
When we're all together as girlies, as women, as dudes, as men, as grandparents, as parents, I'm saying that because that's our people listening to this.
Yeah.
You have more power than you think you do in what you buy, in what you listen to, in what you put out there. Almost as much power as who you vote for is what you buy.
Yes, because as they say, money talks. Well, I guess it's not on this album, but ABBA has a song even about that. Money, money, money.
And that's the power of pop music. They're singing about things that people really care about. That's why people like it. And you know what? People also love to dance.
So we will definitely come back to ABBA at some point because I do think Waterloo would be a really fun song to dive into because, again, history. But join us for our next Spelunk as we explore the groundbreaking film Toy Story and discover which one of us shares a birthday with the movie's own space explorer.
To infinity and beyond.